What real estate decision or decisions do you regret?
I got about 300 of them if you want me to take over this. I got a lot of regrets. Hey everybody, you're kicking it with the Homeboys on the Homeboys podcast, and we are very excited today. We got a very fun show. Today we are talking to Antonio Cucciniello of InvestStarters, and his content is blowing up out there. Scotty and I are watching it. We love it. He's big on investment property. He's big on analyzing investment property. He's a really smart guy. We're honored to have him here. I'm your host, Clint Wetherill. As always, I'm here with my man, Scott Adams. Say something, Scotty.
What's up? Yeah, this is pretty exciting. I've been a big fan of his for a long time. He gives not only great real estate sound advice, but he also seems to be very passionate about financial education as a whole. And I see him talking to a lot of young people out there too, which is really neat. He's a powerful speaker. I can see why people are drawn to him, and we're just excited to be able to sit down with him and soak in some of his knowledge.
Amen. So, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I thank you for all the kind words too. It means a lot coming from you guys that have a lot more experience than me. That's for sure. Well,
we've been in it for a while. And you know what? We're all still just fellow real estate investors, and we know that we can learn something from everybody. So, you know, we really have enjoyed listening to your content, and just, you know, we're happy that we have fellow people that we can bring on the show and kind of share our experiences. So, but anyhow, so why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself? We know that you're a little bit younger than us, 29 years old. But you've got a lot of investing experience. But tell us just about Antonio a little bit.
Yeah. I started making videos online like 5.5 years ago. My brother, I had been thinking about doing it for a while. Like, I felt like people needed to learn about self-help, motivation, business, these things that I was learning, but other people weren't. And it was a sad day. My brother came home from the doctor's office, was diagnosed with stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. And that, like, it clicked in my head at that moment. I was like, all right, my brother has stage 4 cancer, can die at any moment. And he wants to still go to school, still continue his internship. He was 20 at the time. And I'm out here complaining about making a video online and thinking that my friends are going to make fun of me. So that day I just kind of picked up a book and I started talking, and it has slowly evolved into what it is today. So I guess what you're seeing is not just something I was naturally good at, something I had to get a lot better at over time. I mean, I liked investing because the first few days it's actually the first day at my first job as a software engineer, I was just like, I can't do this for forever. There's got to be another way to get this done. I was like finished with all my work by 12 o'clock, and I was just sitting there pretending like I was getting work done. Yeah. And so that day I was texting my friend, and he was like, you know, there's this thing called entrepreneurship, and I didn't know what it was. And so I started reading every book I could get my hands on, came across a few real estate books, and then was ever fascinated about the idea, but I was always really scared about starting. And that fear that I had held me back for so long. And that fear was kind of what put me out there to start talking about this, because I felt like there was other people my age who had just enough money to maybe buy something somewhere, were scared to put all that money into one property, not really know how it would turn out. And so, yeah, like you mentioned earlier, I like analyzing properties and stuff because that was the thing that made me feel more confident about actually getting my first one.
Yeah, we actually just before we came on the air, we were watching one of your TikTok clips. It was talking about how you were a software engineer, and you saw I think it was 25 people got laid off while you were there, and 50-year-old men were crying, and that kind of helped inspired you. I think the clip really spoke to Scotty and I. And I know that there's a lot of people that saw it. It was a viral clip, but is it that real world experience that just kind of catapulted you to say, you know what, corporate America or a normal 9 to 5 is not for me? That this is there's got to be something else out there.
Yeah, it was that was really what pushed me over the edge, because I became a software engineer because it was programmed to me from my parents to just say go to school, become an engineer, lawyer, doctor. Those are my 3 options. Mm-hmm. I picked engineer because it best fit my thing, my skill sets, and I didn't like going to school, so I picked the one that was the easiest and didn't have to go to school for 100 years just to start making some money. And I'm sitting there and I'm witnessing these older men who are supposed to be me in 30, 40 years, right? Mm-hmm. And they don't have any money saved. They don't have anything, any sort of income to retire on. And they're getting laid off after they spent the last 20 years of their life working for this company. So in my head, I was like, it just didn't add up. I was like, why would I put effort into a company that might not care about me, in 5-10 years, who's not going to pay me until I die, basically. And in the end is never going to really care about my intentions and is going to lock me to a desk for forever.
Clint and I had fairly similar experiences. Clint worked for Kohl's corporate right out of college, and I got a job at a company called Cucciniello Capital Management. I lasted 3 days, and I'll never forget the people at the cubicle next to mine. I've told this story 100 times. Clint's heard it, but talking about how they'd saved up all year to buy a big screen TV. And I thought, and they were 35, 40 years old. And that literally changed my life overhearing that conversation. The fact that they were still there at that age saving for a big screen TV. I walked out and never went back, never even picked up my paycheck. And this was a very prestigious job that had 500 applicants, and I was able to get it out of IU Business School. So
I had to stay a little longer because I had already spent my sign-on bonus, and if I quit, then I would have had to have paid it back, and I didn't have it to pay back. But I was done up here at day 3 too.
So it's amazing the conquering of fear. You mentioned fear. It's amazing what people can accomplish, like you, stepping out of of their own fear of the unknown and going and doing things. And it's such an inspirational story about your brother and how you took that fear and just started doing social media. We are incredibly late to the social media game. We've been on speaking circuits for decades. We've got so many clients that we haven't really needed to, and I was kind of scared of it. And so people like you
terrified.
Terrified. Mm-hmm. So people like you are such an inspiration for folks like us who, sure, we have experience in the industry and on the ground, but we see what folks like you are doing out there, and we're just amazed by it. We think it's the neatest thing because you're inspiring people. And the way that you started by being inspired yourself through your brother is a really neat story, and I'm not surprised at all that you've caught fire out there.
It took a while, but that's the thing is I look at content creation as an asset, just like buying properties. I do a lot of upfront work to make a video, to create content, and then it's out there for forever, and it can touch people's lives. It can help someone get started. It can give someone motivation for years and years to come. And so I looked at it as just a different type of asset that is a way of me expressing things that I think people need to hear. And then at the same time, helping other people, to me, is like a win-win. So, and that's the only reason why I guess I've still been doing it all this time and persisted through the years of no one listening.
Well, that brings me to a question, which is I'd like for our listeners and our audience to get to know you and understand why it is that Clint and I follow you and are inspired by you, and why Clint and I have enjoyed your TikToks and everything else for a very long time, actually. And so tell everybody, if you could, kind of your main goals with what you're posting out there and what you're trying to help folks with.
Yeah, my niche, I call it, is I help beginner real estate investors who don't know where to start buy their first rental property with confidence in a step-by-step process. So I basically took my software engineering mind and applied it to real estate. In software engineering, when someone tells you to do something, to build an app, right? They'll tell me, oh, I want the app to have this button, or I want the app to do this thing, right? I basically need to take that and then break that down into code. Okay, step 1, I need to write this line. Step 2, I need to write this line. Step 3, I need to write this. So I kind of applied what I was struggling with in real estate, which was there was all these books, all this information out there, but I felt it was very motivational and not very actionable. It wasn't very much go here, do this, do that. And I felt like in order for someone like me to feel confident about buying a property, to feel confident about getting started, a huge problem is that the home prices have gone up a lot higher since a lot of people who have, hundreds of properties started, that a millennial or a Gen Z doesn't have a lot of capital and can't start where they are. And that was the same problem that I had. So putting all your money into something that you thought was going to work without really being sure it's going to work is a huge blocker for a lot of people. And so I'm just trying to simplify the process as much as possible, break down the nitty-gritty details that don't really get talked about, the things that maybe seem natural to a multimillionaire investor who, they've been doing this for years, that the beginner doesn't really understand or doesn't really break down. That's really what I try to come to every video with in some way, shape, or form.
99% of our clients are out of area. We have a big bulk of clients who buy from us that are in California, and another big pocket for some reason is Utah. Do you see that the younger generation is starting to understand and be comfortable with the idea of buying out of their area, especially if they're in a priced out area and can't invest there?
I think they have no choice, really. For me, I was going to keep saving until I can afford something in New York City. But then once I realized that, I would be saving for years, and I looked at, okay, well, if I bought somewhere else, by the time I had enough money for my first property, I could already be financially free. That math in my head kind of made it clear. I was like, I'm doing it wrong. I need to be doing it the other way. And I do think that, the younger generation is getting better with the internet and doing things remotely, right, than maybe an older generation was. So I think they have an advantage there. Where I think they have a disadvantage is the fact that buying a property is seeming more and more out of reach, and it's getting too expensive with the cost of everything going up the last few years.
Not if they buy rentals in middle America still.
Correct.
Right.
But that was the problem. They're only surrounded by what they see in LA or
Right.
San Francisco or New York or Austin, right? That happens to be where they live. So they're more inundated by the news and by all these things about home prices being so high that they're stuck inside this bubble. And what I'm trying to do is pierce through this bubble and be like, look, you could buy a house for $50,000. It still exists. It's just not where you are.
Right.
It's continuously beating down that marketing to hopefully get them through.
Part of our message that we've identified too is we feel like speaking to some generations younger than us is important. We feel like our generation has done a poor job of passing on financial literacy to the millennial generation or Gen Z. I think it's hard to identify that, but we feel like there was a different, savings techniques that like our parents passed down to us. And like for some reason that there was a generation that was kind of lost. So we see that, a lot of people don't know how to save. People don't know how to invest. And that's a big part of our message. The other thing that we see a lot of is some of the younger generations are mad at their current situation, and sometimes they look pretty unfavorably upon real estate investing. That's something that we have a hard time trying to understand. Even though we're on the same playing field as far as real estate investing, we know you're a little bit younger. Do you kind of get the same impression, or do you feel a different way? Because I genuinely care what you say about this, because we're left scratching our heads a lot of times, like we don't understand it.
No, okay, yeah. So I think that I used to not even know that there was hatred towards real estate investors. Up until I was on TikTok, did I know that there was any hatred whatsoever?
Us too.
Because I always looked up to
us
them.
too.
I always like, whoa, you're rich. I want to be you. Can I please be you one day?
Right.
That was my mentality.
Us too. So, we started with nothing, just to be clear, too. So we looked up to him just like you did. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No. I'm glad we started on the same page. Having, I guess, been in the limelight a little bit here, I've gotten a lot of hate. I've gotten, landlords deserve to die. I've gotten, all these things.
It's crazy. Death to landlords.
I literally had a comment on a video. My first viral video ever said, landlords deserve death. And I replied to it and made a video back. This is back when I had just moved into this house and I was working out of the garage. I made an office in the garage. And like my desk was right next to two garbage cans. That's where I was recording videos. I was taking sales calls in the garage while my girlfriend's sister was driving in and out. Like, this is what I had to do to save money in order to save enough so I could leave my job and keep doing content creation and real estate investing. And long story short, I think I've come to understand more about where they're coming from. But I don't agree with them. And let me try to explain where they're coming from. I guess it's been always pitched to a younger person that the American dream is to be able to go get a job and get married and buy a house and own your house. And that's the easiest way to wealth. But if you grow up in LA or New York, and you are 14 years old, 18 years old, and you're just getting out of high school and you're getting paid $10 an hour, but every apartment around you is $1 million. And the media will blame real estate investors. They'll just throw the blame on them as these rich people who, kind of profit off of the poor people. Or you try to buy a house and you get outbid by an investor who paid all cash. The story that emotionally hits you after what you've been brought up around and seen the prices, it's an easy belief to have.
Right. I think you're trying to help those people, as are we, because we understand those dreams are gone in certain markets, right? And so our entire message, and it appears yours is actually trying to help the very people that feel that way.
Because within their anger is a cry for help. They're pissed that they can't do what you and I are doing, but they can. And I'm trying to help break that. But it is one of the hardest things to do, is to convince someone who doesn't want to be convinced, because the anger, the protective shield they put around themselves is more helpful from them, preventing them getting hurt, because they had the hope and their hope got shut down.
You are a very wise 29-year-old, and it's admirable the fact that you still want to help them and understand the psychology behind it and the reasons for the way they feel they do, and the fact that you still want to help them after doing this for 4 years is incredibly admirable. I can't tell you how hard it is if someone's watching this and doesn't understand what we folks like us are up against, the amount of hate that comes at somebody who's literally trying to help people by sharing ways that they can still reach the American dream. It's just a little bit different than the original plan that they had, and they get hated for it. So kudos to you, man, for sticking through this and keeping on message and caring enough about these folks. I mean, that's pretty neat. I'm gonna take a serious lesson from that and put on my big boy pants and just take some of the hate and keep giving back love.
I think sometimes we all get looped in with institutional investors and Wall Street investors too, which I think is not very fair.
Well, in our market,
we get it here, and
in our market, nobody's being pushed out of affordable housing. Like people say, "Oh, you investors have driven us out, so we can't buy a house." Quit applying your area's problem to me. Anyone who wants to buy a house for $150,000 in Indiana can have a beautiful home for their family. So nobody's pushed out. You know.
Well, I agree with that. I don't know what the solution is, other than someone's got to be blamed for this. I like to blame the government because they blindly do things sometimes and they don't know what they're doing. But we have to have it so home prices are affordable for people. Otherwise, this anger, this resentment is a byproduct of it. And the anger and resentment will cause legislation to make what we do impossible. Like the amount of comments I see on videos that see corporations should not be allowed to buy homes. I'm like, well, I'm a corporation, but I only have 7 properties. What is the line that you draw? Like, what is the line that they're going to draw in capitalism? Is it 7? Is it 100? Is it 1,000?
You're right. I mean, the wealth gap continues to grow too. On top of that, and again, I feel like we are on message as far as wanting to help solve that by teaching people how to be successful through real estate in a different manner. And if you take away this means of corporations owning houses, we don't work for the ultra wealthy. We've had hedge funds approach us. We turn them down, not interested. We like helping individuals find a way to have homes. A lot of our clients live in California and rent there and own rentals here in Indiana, where we have a shortage of rental housing, but a surplus of housing available for people to purchase. So everyone wins in markets like ours, and there's a lot of others, as you know, like ours, where that works. And then the idea that everybody wants to own a home is it's based on false information. I mean, 23% of the population want to rent for a lot of reasons. They're transitional jobs, college, they go to college, they don't want to own in their college town. A lot of reasons, but I don't think that everyone should want to own a home. I think that it should be an option for people. And to me, the only solution seems to be forcing a ton of supply in markets that where the prices are $1 million plus. Right. If we can incentivize building in those areas and building a lot of units, then the price of things will go down. Economics 101 to the rescue. But the problem is these cities keep making different legislations to make it harder for things to get built. Like even here in Austin, I don't remember the exact law, but they had something up for legislation where every house on a corner lot that was within certain radius of a train station would now be able to, that was zoned for single family, would now be able to go up to 6 units, right? That would take a single family house and bump it up to 5 more units, 5 housing units on every single block, that would help alleviate some of the supply demand issues we're having here. But I don't even know if it passed. And these are things like this is what actually ends up causing the problem, because there's not enough houses to buy then at that point. Right. So what do you see as the best path forward? I know you talk to a lot of young folks out there who are getting started and a lot of people who are saving. They've figured out the power of saving and compounding interest. Then the next step, what do you suggest for them? Real estate right after they've got a certain amount of savings, or where do you dive in for the steps? You're saying once you have enough money, what do you do? Yeah. Yeah. At how much money do you recommend people have saved up before they dive into real estate, or do you recommend people just dive in day one and figure it out?
Yeah, I always recommend that you have some money. I say that if you're going to do a house hack, you could probably do something having saved less than 20,000, depending on what market you're going to do and the purchase price. And if you have more than 20,000, and you want to invest out of state, that's enough to put 20% down on an out of state 100K property. Give or take a little bit for closing costs. So that's kind of my barrier, depending on where you're trying to go and how much you have.
We're big on keeping some equity, in your property, because we feel like it's kind of a rainy day fund. You never know what life situation could happen. Could be
recessions,
could be recession, could be health, could be a number of different things. So we don't believe in like full leverage, to the hilt. So we agree with you. But you said an interesting word there, and I want to go back to it. You said, house hack. And Scotty and I aren't the foremost experts on house hacking or arbitrage or anything to that. Can you speak a little bit more to what you mean by house hack?
Yeah. House hacking is traditionally done as a first property or second property where you live in the property. You use it buying an FHA loan with 3.5% down. So it allows you to get a lower down payment. The requirement is to live in it for a year as your primary residence. And you move in. And for a year, you can either rent out the other bedrooms if you buy a single family home, or you could rent out other units up to 4 units. So you can do a duplex, a triplex, a quadplex. Each county around the United States has an FHA loan limit. So depending on how expensive houses are in your area, you'll have a different loan limit for that area. But the cool part is it allows you to get in with less money down to a house, start building a little bit of equity, and hopefully have a lot of your rent covered, because the rent that you'll charge the other units, I'll give a quick example. Let's say you have a house and your mortgage is $1,500 per month. And it's a 4-bedroom house, and you rent out each bedroom for $500 each. The 3 bedrooms together is $1,500. Your mortgage is $1,500. Now all you got to pay is taxes, insurance, and utilities for the year. And you probably lived for cheaper than you would if you rented. And you have your first property. A year later, you'll move out, and then you can buy another one, not with an FHA loan, unfortunately, but something conventional.
I want to draw a distinction that you said that I think is important for the audience to know, which is you said to do this on your first few properties. You said, I think 1 to 2, but generally speaking on your first few. And then it sounds like you think that having a larger down payment for the next ones might be the best path, but I don't want to put words into your mouth. Do you worry about people doing this past the first 2, not having enough equity in their house, and then there's a pullback in the market, and or do you recommend equity in rental properties?
I think it all depends on what mode you're in. If you're in offensive mode and you don't have the option to have a lot of equity, and you have no sense that there'll be a recession anytime soon, or you have no need to sell, like you have a job, you can cover the mortgage, no problem, then to me, it doesn't matter as much if you're getting lower down payment options a couple times through. If you are like, if we're talking about right now, this second in time where I think property values are dropping a little bit at least, I would be more wary about doing that, because if you are forced to sell, you would not want to have to sell when your mortgage is higher than your home price.
The reason we talk a lot about this is because Clint and I have been doing this since the 90s, so around a while. And
you've seen things.
We have, and we survived the 2008 recession, whereas people who were a lot smarter than us, a lot wealthier than us, we watched go bust.
Yeah, we saw a lot of people get cleaned out.
Who leveraged pretty heavily, even though they were wealthy. And what happens is it became what we watched happen to many, many investors was the cycle would properties were no longer worth what they owed, right? Because they only had, say, 5% equity. They had only put 5% down on each property. And it snowballs because one tenant will move out. It's not a big deal. The person's wealthy. They've got a lot of properties. It doesn't seem like a big deal. But before you know it, during the recession, there was a pullback in tenants paying rent. So all at once, it was almost a tidal wave effect. And then a tenant moves out, and as you know, you got to do tenant turns, which add up. And before we knew it,
periods of vacancy.
And then you would have properties that were just kind of dogs and wouldn't perform, but the person couldn't sell it. So they just had to hold a property that was no longer a performer because they owed more than it was worth. And so we just saw it snowball with a lot of folks. So we just preach a little caution once you start building your portfolio. The house hack as a way to get in it's brilliant. It's genius. We did it. We used FHA loans to buy our first houses. You know, it's the house hack idea is great. I just
don't want a bunch of other people living with me.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a way for folks who don't have another way in to get in. And so it serves its purpose.
It's a great way.
It serves its purpose. We just try to caution about once you get too big of a portfolio, leaving equity in your property is what we preach is all.
Okay. Actually, I have a question for you guys. What would be so I am equally terrified as excited for a recession.
Right. Good.
This would be my first real one going through as an investor and making money. Last one I was in high school. So I want to go through it so I can learn and so I can buy properties at discount, but I also want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to cover myself to make sure that nothing goes wrong. So other than making sure that I have enough equity in my properties and having some savings, what do you recommend I do?
Line up money besides your savings now. Create relationships at your size. Create relationships with a small bank or even private expensive money so that when those deals come along and everyone else is running away from buying, you can run towards it. And keep in mind, mortgages will be... If it's anything like past recessions, mortgages become more difficult to qualify for. Banks become scared of rental properties, and they do not push them. So line up as much as you can there. Shore up your properties. Get rid of any dogs now. Make sure you've got, we say, a minimum of 20% equity across the board in your properties. With the way things have appreciated, most investors have that now, just naturally. Even if they paid, they financed 100%, suddenly they're at 80% LTV. What else?
No, I think access to money is by far the biggest thing. I think people that haven't gone through a recession, especially the one that we went through, which was massive, just don't understand that money dries up fast. There's a big regional bank here that we even do all their foreclosure work for them. And we're in with everybody, the board of directors, everyone.
Yeah, so we have a brokerage, sorry, just to clarify. Mm-hmm. We have a sizable normal real estate brokerage. So we handle all the foreclosure work and listings for regional banks too. It's just one of our other businesses.
But even with our relationship, they weren't lending to any investors. A lot of the lenders don't want to get into investment property during, recessionary times. So, and the same is true with hard money. You'd be surprised how much hard money lenders and private money just want to go to the sidelines because Chicken Little's out and they're scared that the sky is falling. It's a wild phenomenon, and we only really experienced that, for 4 years. So I think that the biggest thing for me, my best advice to anybody is be cautious of how little money is moving during recessionary times. So, you
cannot exit your portfolio. I mean, it would be terrible to have to do it at that time.
But if you have at least 20% equity, my belief is in even most recessions that provides the safety net that if there's a major life event that you have to get out for a reason, that even a fire sale could happen. Now, the other side of this, I do not believe that we're going into a 2008 recession. I don't. Right. I don't believe that. I think that we didn't even really realize how unique and generational it was till we kicked and clawed and scratched our way out of it. And it wasn't that we were just like losing money hand over fist, because I think, you were positioned in a great spot and I was positioned in a great spot. It was just, you weren't making much. You weren't the cash flow, almost went to a stand.
Yeah, line up money. Make sure your portfolio is pretty clean, meaning, the life events will happen. You're right. If in a perfect world, as long as no life events happen, you don't have to sell. Why would you be in trouble? Well, if life were that easy, then, so be it. But for the beginner investor, we believe you should be buying heavily right now, even though we believe there will be a little pullback or even a slight recession coming up. We still think they should be buying because they might not be able to, even though it will be a better time to buy as far as prices. We believe if it's anything like past recessions, it'll be difficult for them to acquire the loans in order to do these things and the capital and their own savings. So despite the fact that, you'll probably pay more right now than if you tried to time the market perfectly, it's still a great time to buy. We feel like we're buying. I mean, we're building 140 townhomes right now. We're breaking ground on 25 duplexes, so 50 doors in Southern Indiana. 16 doors in just north of where we are now, or in Muncie, not far off from Muncie, where you've been.
Anderson?
Yeah. So we
actually have an office in Anderson.
Yeah, so we bought a warehouse in Anderson right next to the casino and gutted it and run our maintenance out of there. But we're heavy buying right now, even though we agree that there's probably some bumps ahead in this market, whatever it is. But we know that money dries up. So, on a personal message to you, you've got a large enough portfolio now. I would suggest you try to start building some banking relationships where you can get some lines of credit that are direct, not real estate related. And for folks who are just starting out, we really suggest buying now so that they can have a portfolio that will help see them through the pullback.
You mean uncollateralized business lines of credit, something like that? Or
collateralized, but still a business line of credit. Mm-hmm. Collateralized with the properties or uncollateralized. I'll tell you what, there will be no uncollateralized loans if there's a recession, available. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. You're not the first people to give me that advice. So,
so Muncie, Anderson, our area a little bit. Whenever you come back, to town, we're going to have to get together and break some bread and hang out. Maybe we could show you around some.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I last time I was there I'd only been there one time, but I came April last year when I was telling you about our
awesome weather here.
Situation. Yeah.
It sucks. It sure does. Well, we want to finish our podcast, and really kind of make this about you. So we have a few
three closing questions.
But first of all, we've loved having you on, and we really respect you and what you're doing and the message that you're sending out there to people. And there's a lot that Scotty and I, have learned by watching your content and by having you on. So we appreciate that. But do you want to?
Sure. So first question: closing. What is the best real estate decision you ever made?
Getting started.
There you go. That's a great one.
Amount of it wasn't my first property wasn't the best deal I've done, but it by far lit a fire under me and made the connection in my head. It was like, holy crap, I can actually do this. And it panned out from what I thought it was going to be. And if I keep doing this, I can actually reach that goal that I had in my head of becoming financially free. It's possible. And so, that has to be the best one by far, even though
just do it, man. We say it all the time.
Yeah, we love it. So next question is, what real estate decision or decisions do you regret?
I got about 300 of them. If you want me to take over this, I got a lot of regrets.
Well, I'm not surprised you guys have a lot. So I had this deal under contract in March. It was a single family home, off market deal that I got that is built like a 5-unit. And it was my first short-term rental because I don't have any short-term rentals. And my goal this year was to retire my dad with the income that I'm making from the properties.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I needed about $6,000 more in passive income in order to reach that. So this 4,000 more. This property had about 7,500 was a conservative estimate from what Airbnb rentals look like in the area. And I'm the type of person that wants to make sure I do everything by the book, and I tried to do everything by the book. So it was my understanding that I needed to get approval because this was in a government district. I needed to get approval from two committees, Mansion Area District Committee and the Capital Zoning District Committee. We call the town. We speak to someone on the phone. They're like, "Yeah, I've never seen anyone not get denied having the setup that you have, plus parking spaces," which we had. So I show up to the first meeting, and like as the meeting is starting, I go and look down at the report that they wrote for my property, and basically there was an objection to my request, and the lady said, "I live next door and I've seen the neighborhood decline. There's no way I can accept a short-term rental at this property." I end up looking up the property records. The property next door is a bed and breakfast, and the same lady owns the bed and breakfast on the block perpendicular to it. And she sits on the committee. And all of her friends were there. Basically, I go through the process. They shut me down. They don't allow me to do it. And I speak to a bunch of lawyers afterwards, and they were like, "You didn't legally have to go through the actual committee. You could have just gone around it, set it up, and then face the consequences later," which they couldn't really stop you unless they passed the law. But me being trying to be the nice person that I am, lost out on this deal because the only way for me to fight it at that point, once they had denied me, was to appeal it in court. And that would have costed me a lot of money in court and a lot of money in hard money fees. That would have just been interest-only payments. So my biggest regret was not doing that without letting the town know.
So asking for forgiveness instead of permission?
Yep, I learned it the hard way.
That's smart.
Don't beat yourself up. I had a similar situation with the Historic Commission. It was almost exactly like that.
Yeah, it was a nightmare.
I lost. But
they're just the worst.
Yeah,
they're the worst.
awful.
Before I went up, there was someone talking for an hour about what kind of paint they used on the windows. I was like,
yeah.
Oh my God.
Sounds very familiar.
We've been there, specifically him on a bachelor home he bought many years ago when he was still single. A big old, how many square feet was that thing?
It was like 6,500.
Yeah, in a downtown historic district, cool mansion, and they didn't like the windows.
Oh, they tore me apart.
Yeah.
They tore me apart. It was bad. I'm still walking funny from it.
Yeah. So last question. What real estate advice do you have for the next generation? Which you talk a lot about this on your... I'm going to let you answer, but just for anyone watching, follow his TikToks, follow his social media. He speaks on this answer heavily throughout, and everything I've seen him say so far, I agree with. So he's a great person to follow for this answer besides his short answer here.
It's hard to answer in a short answer, but my answer would be keep believing that it's possible, and you may have to sacrifice a thing or two to get started that maybe didn't need to be done 20, 30 years ago. But if you do it, it'll get you on the right path to getting started. That's probably as short as succinct as I could possibly make it.
So true.
So true.
So true. Well, we thank you very much, Antonio, for coming on and hanging out with us. We think a lot of what you're doing out there, and we really appreciate your time. So any last words, Mr. Adams?
Just thanks so much. Enjoyed it just as much as I thought I would. So we appreciate you.
Well, thanks, guys. It means a lot to have guys like you compliment me and
we're cheering you
in
on.
my future.
We're cheering you on out here. You're going places, so keep going strong on your own portfolio. Don't forget about yourself along this ride. You know, you gotta build your portfolio up.
Yeah, it's I've been trying to find ways to use my audience to help me build the portfolio even more.
Smart.
And that's kind of where I'm stuck at right now. Is what is the right way for me to do it? and haven't had the answer yet, but working on it.
Well, when you find the answer, I know what you're going to do, which is you're going to share that answer with everybody like you do everything, and you're going to make a lot of other people, you're going to help a lot of other people figure that out at the same time you figure it out. So best of luck out there.
Thank you, guys.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us on the Homeboys podcast. Anthony Cucciniello of Invest Starters. Check out his content. This guy's awesome. He's really spreading a good message out there to all investors, but particularly reaching the younger audience. We appreciate you joining us. Till next time, happy investing.